overwhelmed right now, but there's just a lot of people to thank. First of all, my teammates, I wouldn't be here without any of you. And a lot of you came back. You know, you have busy schedules, and I think that just speaks to the culture of this place. Really exciting time still for this program. I'm very fortunate to be a part of it, and feel very lucky that a lot of my former teammates and former coaches are here and able to support me, and a lot of friends and family. So I'm just really lucky.
Following the ceremony, the Hawkeyes stunned number 4 USC with a 76-69 win. The Hawkeyes took an 18-4 advantage out of the first quarter. They improved to 15-7 with the victory and handed the Trojans just their second loss. Bundle auto and home, renters or condo, and save with Progressive. That's the SportsGrid Sports Flash. I'm Chuck Sanders.
What was that?
That is business phone bliss with the Ooma Cloud Phone System. It handles all our voice, video, and messaging needs.
You sound very...
Calm? I am. Ooma has everything I need to handle the busy holiday season, like virtual receptionist, call routing, and video conferencing. And it starts at just $19.95 per month per user, plus taxes and fees.
Ooma.
Nice. Find your business comm at ooma.com/radio.
Hey, I got you something.
What's this?
Just a little Galentine's gift from JTV.
Do you mean jewelry television? I love their jewelry. They have the...
New customers get $25 off their first purchase of $75 or more. Visit jtv.com/romance.
Yeah, their artisan collections? Gorgeous.
Are you going to open your gift?
Oh, yeah. It's the pearl bracelet.
New customers receive $25 off their first purchase of $75 or more. Visit jtv.com/romance.
No way football is played in the fall and winter
because the hits don't hurt as much when you're numb. Get the lowdown on all the sports action coming up right here.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Scott Wetzel and Ben Stevens.
It is officially Super Bowl week. Live right here on Football Full Circle. That is FFC, all a part of the SportsGrid Radio Network in Sirius XM Channel 159. He is Scott Wetzel. I am Ben Stevens. We are now just 6 days away from Super Bowl Sunday. Super Bowl 59 as the NFL world descends on New Orleans for Super Bowl 59 between the Chiefs and the Eagles. Scott, last week at the end of championship weekend, we recapped what we saw. We took the early look on where things were. It is officially now game week as the final game of this football season, the biggest of each and every year in the NFL, is just 6 days away, where the numbers will move for Super Bowl 59. The edges in the key matchups that everybody needs to know, in all of the news out of NOLA all week long, live right here on Football Full Circle.
Yeah, it's a great matchup, obviously, right? I mean, so you would think there would be a ton of storylines, but, this is a replay from 2 years ago, right? We've had the Mahomes versus Hurts. We've had Andy Reid versus his former team. We all the thing. We had Kelsey and everything else. Maybe the Kelsey versus Kelsey, that's not there this year. So it's one less storyline for what we had a couple of years ago. But it's kind of weird, Ben. I think that's why a lot of people were kind of poo-pooing this matchup. It's like, wow, we've seen this before, even though it was a great game. Boy, I'd sign up for a game like that again, right? But just this is the hype of the 2-week machine, and it's and I think we're all sick of the Taylor Swift story. So there's not a whole lot new to kind of bring up. I'm sure someone will say something this week, but for now, this last week it was kind of like, all right, no big deal, nothing really new.
It's kind of that time, right? The layoff after championship weekend, when the Super Bowl matchup is set. You react to it, you look at the early numbers, but it loses a little bit of that steam. It will build once again, of course, this week in the Big Easy. There's news around the NFL that we will bring you, some coordinator and coaching hires and things of that nature. But, Scott, it was a blockbuster weekend in the NBA, with shocking and stunning trades up and down the board, namely Luka Doncic. The reason I bring that up is because that continues into Super Bowl week in the NFL. Not a done deal yet, but Myles Garrett, the reigning NFL Defensive Player of the Year, has officially released a statement requesting a trade from Cleveland. This happening in the last hour as the NFL world gets ready to focus on what is going to occur this week in the Big Easy. Here was the statement from Myles Garrett. As a kid dreaming of the NFL, All I focused on was the ultimate goal of winning a Super Bowl, and that goal fuels me today more than ever. My love for the community of Northeast Ohio and the incredible fan base of the Cleveland Browns has made this one of the toughest decisions of my life. These past 8 years have shaped me into the man that I am today. While I've loved calling this city my home, my desire to win and compete on the biggest stages won't allow me to be complacent. The goal was never to go from Cleveland to Canton. It was always, it has always been to compete for and win a Super Bowl. With that in mind, I have requested to be traded from the Cleveland Browns. Signed, Myles Garrett. So, a little bit of drama and some juice around the National Football League entering Super Bowl week.
Yeah. Will he really be moved? It's not surprising guys right now are maybe going through this, right? They're seeing the Super Bowl, seeing the hype, seeing how great it would be in the Super Bowl. Then they reflect back on their careers and say, man, I am nowhere close. If you're a Cleveland Brown anyway, I'm nowhere close to going to the Super Bowl. But I will say, though, Ben, listen, we've had this run, 19 out of 20 years, whatever it is, of a last place team going to first place. We've had the resurgence of the Washington Commanders coming out of nowhere from last year. 2 years ago was the Houston Texans. So, we have seen teams that are seemingly just dead in the water, if you will, come back to reality and come back to life and be, a main factor in the NFL. So who's to say Cleveland can't do that? And they do hold the second overall pick. Are you going to trade him? I don't know if you'd get two first-round draft choices, like supposedly there's speculation out there. I mean, that's a lot. I know the Jets actually got that for Jamal Adams. You remember that trade from Seattle a few years back. But, he's going to be 29, 30 years old. Does have 2 years left. Pretty modest contract, $25 million over the next 2 years. That's halfway decent, but we'll see. It wouldn't be the worst thing. Listen, if you get two first-round draft choices for him and they're high first-rounders, that'd be tough to say no to that.
For sure. And I would expect at least one first-round selection back for Myles Garrett, because when you look at what he has done, Scott, throughout his 8 years in Cleveland, especially the last 5. Last year, of course, Defensive Player of the Year for the first time in his career, but 4 of the previous 5 seasons, including this year in 2024, despite the Browns just being a 3-14 team, AP first team All-Pro. When you think of fearsome defensive linemen and edge rushers in the NFL, Myles Garrett comes to mind with the best of them. TJ Watt, Micah Parsons, Myles Garrett. Really how you would group those guys continuously in contention for Defensive Player of the Year and trying to lead the National Football League year in, year out in getting after the quarterback. Win rate in terms of pass rush is ridiculous, forcing turnovers based on what he does, causing havoc and pressure with the best around the NFL. But Scott, one thing that really stood out to me in Myles Garrett's statement was that exact line. The goal was never to go from Cleveland to Canton. It has always been to compete for and win a Super Bowl. At the end of year press conference, GM in Cleveland, Andrew Berry, was asked about what the offseason holds for Myles Garrett. Reiterated that line. We think he will go from Cleveland to Canton. Last week at the Senior Bowl in Mobile, Andrew Berry, as most front office execs are around the NFL, was there to scout the next talent in the National Football League. He was asked about trading Myles Garrett, and he said, correct, you could put that on record in terms of not having any interest in doing so at any stage this offseason. And Scott further had this to say, quote, my expectation is that he'll have a direct ticket from Cleveland to Canton at the end of his years and expect him to be here and retire a Brown, quite frankly. Again, that was from general manager in Cleveland, Andrew Berry, last week at Mobile for the Senior Bowl. So the fact that Myles Garrett added that in his statement to officially request a trade from Cleveland, to me, Scott, shows this is not exactly a loving partnership at this moment, and that Myles Garrett has taken exception with something happening in that Cleveland front office. He wants to be dealt. He wants it to happen soon.
Yeah. And listen, if you want to take it the bigger picture with the Browns, if you want to get rid of Deshaun Watson, you got to swallow a whole bunch of salary cap, right? So if you do move Myles Garrett, I'm not sure. I'd have to look at his cap numbers, but I'm assuming it's between $20 and $30 million a year, since that's what he makes. I mean, this might be the one big step backwards to go 2 step forwards and just say, you know what, 2025 regular season 26 is going to be a lost year, so let's just lose it completely and just reshuffle the deck for 2027. Again, the Browns can say all they want, but nobody wants a player on their team that really doesn't want to be there. And if Garrett makes a big stink about it, Ben, then I suspect he will be on the move. I think it's more of now trying to convince him to stay versus the Browns deciding if they want to trade him or not. I think if they can't convince him, I think they will eventually move him.
He is under contract through the 2026 season. That would include this upcoming year and the year following before he could become an unrestricted free agent, and the final few years of his deal are void after that. So it would take some maneuvering. It's not like Myles Garrett is going to be cut or is looking, of course, for a contract extension, but he, of course, has made his indication and preference clear. He wants to be traded from the Cleveland Browns. Scott, we'll talk more about what this means for the Browns. Of course, as you mentioned, in the context of Deshaun Watson, the precarious future in Cleveland, still holding that second overall selection for 2025. But Myles Garrett was the first overall pick in 2017. Baker Mayfield, the first overall pick in 2018 by the Browns. Both guys might be gone at some point, of course, this offseason. We'll continue the conversation next on Football Full Circle.
4 out of 5 scientists agree it's smarter to be on SportsGrid. And we're pretty sure that one scientist is still a virgin.
He just gives that 5.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
A newly discovered asteroid has a tiny chance of hitting Earth in 2032, according to space agency officials. This update brought to you by Sky Rizzy. Explore proven results with Sky Rizzy. Scientists put the odds of a strike at slightly more than 1%. First spotted last month by a telescope in Chile, the near-Earth asteroid, designated 2024 YR4, is estimated to be 130 to 330 feet across. Scientists are keeping close watch on the space rock. United States Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem has decided to end temporary protection for about 350,000 Venezuelans who sought refuge in the United States. Noem revoked one of 2 temporary protected status designations for Venezuela, which the previous administration had placed due to extreme poverty, economic issues, and political crises in the country, according to the New York Times. Noem deemed conditions in Venezuela no longer met criteria for protection and that their presence in the U.S. was contrary to the national interest. I'm Trey Westerberg with the SportsGrid News Flash.
Now's the time to shop limited-time doorbuster deals during Pro Savings Days at Lowe's. Save $50 on a Little Giant King Combo 6-foot ladder. Was $199, now $149. Plus, save $100 on a DeWalt XR 20-volt Power Stack 5-amp-hour battery. Was $199, now $99. Get these can't-miss deals now before they're gone. Lowe's knows savings. Lowe's knows pros. Doorbusters valid 1/13 through 1/15. Selection varies by location while supplies last.
Progressive presents Renter's MVP's Most Valuable Possessions. Today's MVP, Tom Kelly's carbon fiber mountain bike. Because more than riding his carbon fiber mountain bike, Tom loves telling people about his carbon fiber mountain bike. Friends, family, even a local barista knows about his carbon fiber mountain bike. And that's why Tom's carbon fiber mountain bike, if you haven't heard about it, is today's MVP. Keep your most valuable possessions protected by bundling your renters and auto insurance with Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company affiliates and other insurers not available in all states.
There's something you should know and always remember.
SportsGrid does not increase luck.
We're your unfair advantage for the latest sports gaming information. If you're looking for luck,
go find a horseshoe.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Scott Wetzel and Ben Stevens.
It is Super Bowl week, 6 days away from Super Bowl 59 in New Orleans. But to start off Super Bowl week, some big news around the NFL. Myles Garrett has officially requested a trade from the Cleveland Browns, releasing a statement earlier on this Monday, just over an hour ago. The Browns and GM Andrew Berry have been pretty steadfast, Scott, in the idea they are not interested in trading Myles Garrett, despite what his desires might be. We'll see if the official trade request changes that at all. But Myles Garrett's impact for this Cleveland team cannot be overlooked. For the previous 5 years, AP first team All-Pro. The 1 year he did not, 3 seasons ago, AP second team All-Pro, and of course the reigning Defensive Player of the Year. So all of that as a part of this conversation. For a Browns team, once again, Scott, that for the last 3-4 years has really been one that enters every season with some offseason optimism, and yet found itself after a disastrous 2024 that led to Deshaun Watson rupturing his Achilles, setting back the franchise even more so, ending the year with a 3-14 record. Where do you think Cleveland stands right now if/when they do ultimately deal Myles Garrett?
Yeah, I tell you what, Ben, the outlook is not good. Right now, listen, they do hold the second overall pick. They can draft a quarterback. They can turn that into 2, 3, 4, maybe, who knows, other first-round picks. So it can change over the next 3 to 4 months. But just from right now, they don't have a quarterback. They don't have a running back because what we saw to Nick Chubb the last 3 weeks, 4 weeks when he came back from his injury, he was not even close to what he was, his previous years. They don't have a wide receiver. They traded away Amari Cooper, who really did nothing, but they don't have a wide receiver. So their offense is as dead can be, and now their star defensive player wants out. It's not. Look, I could see where he's looking and saying, "Wow, we're not even close to being. Forget a Super Bowl. They're not even close in that division, especially to being a playoff team." And in the AFC in general. So, listen, I understand why he'd say, get me the heck out of here. 29, coming up on 30 years old. How many good years do I really have left? I get it. But I think if the Browns were smart, if they really wanted to just, let's really start from scratch, trade Myles Garrett, get a realistically, you got to get 2 number ones. Listen, he's from Texas. Would the Dallas Cowboys try and one up the Dallas Mavericks and say, all right, you traded away this guy, we're going to steal the headlines? Kind of doubt that. Probably the Houston Texans. But let's say you can get 2 first rounders. You get 2 first rounders for him. Yeah. You probably could easily get 3, if not 4 first rounders for that second overall pick. Now you got yourself 5, 6 first rounders, and you really start from scratch all over again.
And Scott, they do kind of start from scratch from a draft capital perspective, seeing as they gave up 3 first-round picks for that Deshaun Watson deal. And of course, when a staple of the franchise, Myles Garrett, drafted first overall out of Texas A&M back in 2017 by Cleveland, is now trying to make his way out. I've already seen some response from some Cleveland folks and Northeast Ohio folks that I follow that are not feeling great about the state of their favorite football team. And how could you at this stage? Scott, what is so funny is the Cleveland Browns 2 years ago, now the 2023 NFL season, with wily old veteran journeyman Joe Flacco, won 11 games and earned a playoff spot. And there was some thought that, Deshaun Watson wasn't fully healthy last year with his shoulder issue, still trying to get back up to speed in terms of his NFL life if he is healthy, and the talent even gets close to anything he did in Houston in 2018, 2019, 2020, this Browns team could be an outside playoff contender in a difficult division, meanwhile, and of course in a competitive AFC. But the Browns' win total entering 2024 wasn't 5.5, it was 8.5. They were expected to be a winning football team, or at least flirt with that record above 500. It was so far away from that, you really can't even fathom the fact that it was 8.5 in the preseason, 3-14. And frankly, Scott, even with Deshaun Watson out there before the Achilles injury, it was dismal on the offensive side of the football. I honestly think you will look back at the Deshaun Watson trade as one of, if not simply, the worst deals that has ever been done in NFL history.
Yeah. When you consider the amount they gave up, his lack of production, and they gave him a contract extension on top of all that, that made him one of the craziest, highest paid players, right? All the other NFL owners were all upset about. There's really, and then you throw the scandal, off the field stuff. There's not a whole heck of a lot you could point to. They're in salary cap hell. They can't cut ties, even though they know at this point they would, I've no doubt, would love to. So it set that franchise back when everything is said and done, been a good 5, 6, 7 years. When you really look at it, that's why, as I laid out that, trade and get draft choices back, I get that. But, the key to it all is you have to find someone outside of Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders that you like. Maybe a Jackson Dart, maybe a guy that you kind of like, we could win with this guy. instead of holding on to that number 2 overall pick. But if they don't, as tempting as it no doubt will be, maybe just change the whole, situation in Cleveland. You hold on to that pick, you draft Sanders or Ward, whoever falls to you at the number 2 spot, and maybe that's your fresh start.
Yeah, I guess it could be enticing as a franchise from that perspective, but Scott, the context of Deshaun Watson's deal that you mentioned and all the financial obligations that will still be owed to him, even with the re-rupture. Yeah.
I mean, he would have to still be on the team. Go ahead.
For sure, he is. There would be no doubt about it. You're not going to cut him and take on even more of that dead cap hit. There is some financial flexibility, or at least a little levity, Scott, I believe, with some injury issues in the re-rupturing of said Achilles injury for Deshaun Watson earlier this offseason. That could provide at least a little bit of financial relief. There is still so much tied to that for the Cleveland Browns right now. And it's part of the reason that Myles Garrett has said, listen, you guys are going to be rebuilding once again with a rookie quarterback and try to change the direction of this team. I'm interested in competing for a contender, which the Browns now seem a couple years away from becoming, if they ever even got to that stage once again. More news around the NFL, and then Super Bowl 59 will continue to set the stage for the biggest matchup of every season in the Big Easy. That's next on FFC.
There's smart
and there's not smart.
Not smart is hope as a strategy. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Keep it here
And win. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. The SportsGrid Radio Network presents This Date in Sports History.
In 2 of the biggest upsets in Super Bowl history, the first in 2002, despite being 14-point underdogs to the Rams, the Patriots upset St. Louis 20-17. And in 2008, the Giants ended New England's bid for a perfect season as Big Blue held off the Pats 17-14.
Manning lobs it. Burris alone. Touchdown, New York.
For SportsGrid Radio, I'm Mike DeMurgis.
The Technology Minute with George Capalbo.
Penn State University researchers are attaching miniature QR codes to the backs of honeybees to track their movements in and out of the hive. Sensitive optical sensors attached to the hive log bees coming and going. They found most trips last just a few minutes, and some lazy bees just like to hang around the hive. But hard workers stay away for hours loading up with nectar. The goal, placing beehives in the wild to improve their health and honey production. But I bet the thing you really want to know, how the heck do you stick a QR code on a bee? Follow me at G Capalbo on X and stay tuned to The Technology Minute for more cool stuff like this.
Carver and Lisi.
Here's a parlay I drummed up. Calcaterra for a touchdown, Pirine for a touchdown.
You're such a pig. You're such a pig. You always have to take all these big ones and put them together, and then one of them's going to hit, and you're going to walk away with nothing.
And Saquon Barkley, 25 receiving yards. On 200, it pays $88,624.58.
You're so greedy.
It's Carver and Lisi with Mike Carver and Joe Lisi. Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 Pacific. On the SportsGrid Radio Network. Wherever you go,
there you are.
Download the SportsGrid mobile app and we'll be right there with you.
So now you can get the winning edge
anywhere, even while the wife's talking to you.
If you've got an earbud.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Scott Wetzel and Ben Stevens.
Live right here on Football Full Circle. It is FFC. So the Myles Garrett trade request, of course, will be big news. We'll monitor anything that Cleveland has to say in response. They've been pretty steadfast in the idea they are not all that interested in trading Myles Garrett, reigning Defensive Player of the Year, away this offseason. Scott, some more news around the NFL throughout the weekend in terms of that coaching carousel. Not the final head coaching vacancy in New Orleans with the Saints, but the offensive coordinator now in the Sin City in Las Vegas. After leading Ohio State to a national championship, Chip Kelly, making his way back to the National Football League, will be the offensive coordinator with the Las Vegas Raiders under Pete Carroll. Chip Kelly makes his way back to the NFL, and Scott, not for a pay cut or a discount, but in fact, now the highest paid coordinator in the National Football League, making, by reports, $6 million per year on average. Chip Kelly, now the new OC in Las Vegas under Pete Carroll.
Yeah, that's great. If they're getting that kind of money, wow, right? That's going to answer my question, and that is to Ben, why? I mean, it's a lateral move. You're at Ohio State. I know you got to strike while the iron is hot, but you're Chip Kelly, and it's Ohio State. You're always going to be good, right? I mean, it's not like they're at risk of going 7-5 next season. So you're always going to be successful, I would think. You're going to a team, the Raiders, it doesn't have a quarterback, doesn't have any wide receivers. I know they're trying to change the culture there, if you will, with Pete Carroll coming in, and he's probably saying, okay, you know what, go run the offense however you want it. Are there any? There's got to be some promises. Maybe he thinks, okay, they'll have some success. Pete will stay there a couple of years, and then I'll be the head coach, in waiting. Maybe that's it. But on the surface, outside of the money, and that's big. Outside of the money, though, I don't get the attraction of going to the Raiders right now.
Yeah, it's a great point, Scott, really, because you don't have a quarterback in place. I guess when you don't have a lot there, you can almost kind of incorporate your scheme as you would like. Of course, Chip Kelly, as the Eagles head coach, was revolutionary in some of the things that he was bringing from the college ranks to the NFL now over a decade ago. Fast tempo, no huddle, spread and space all over the field. Not necessarily revolutionary what Chip Kelly now wants to do on the offensive side of the football, even in the National Football League. But one thing Chip Kelly, in my estimation, just from knowing what he did collegiately, either at Oregon as an OC, then the head coach, or during his time in Westwood at UCLA, and certainly this year at Ohio State. Scott, you think spread, you think air it out everywhere, air raid, that's not necessarily Chip Kelly's system. It is more predicated on establishing the run. Ohio State, a great rushing attack in the college football playoff. Basically every year at UCLA, top 20, top 25 nationally, averaging nearly 200 yards per game on the ground year in, year out. Josh Jacobs isn't there anymore in Las Vegas. There's a lot that needs to be figured out. And, of course, you have to start at the quarterback position in the NFL. But now with Chip Kelly kind of organizing and orchestrating the offense, I wonder how that affects the planning in the rebuild in Las Vegas.
Yeah, and they don't have a super high draft choice. So right now, anyway, they're not in a position to get one of the top two quarterbacks. Maybe it's a challenge thing. Didn't work out in Philadelphia, didn't work out in San Francisco for him. He may say it's worked out, with Oregon and now Ohio State. So I've done whatever I need to do in college. So let's get my next challenge. Is that it? But you talk about having a challenge, though. Not only is it the Raiders, not only is it that you don't have talent on the team. Oh, by the way, you happen to be in a division with, the Kansas City Chiefs and LA Chargers and now Denver Broncos. So, you talk about looking up. You can't get much lower than that right now. But all right, $6 million though. Went out to put a lot of smiles and a lot of optimism, I guess, in your back pocket.
For sure. 4 years, by the way, for Chip Kelly in the NFL, all as a head coach. Has not been a coordinator, has not been an assistant, doing anything in the NFL. Of course, the rapid rise through the collegiate ranks at Oregon and then to the National Football League. Scott, we didn't really give the Raiders the slack perhaps they deserved at the tail end of the season, like the Giants or the Patriots winning games as an underdog. The Raiders were a slight favorite in a couple of their final games down the stretch that they won, as the odds makers expected them to, bounced them all the way outside of the top 5. The Raiders have the 6th overall pick in the 2025 NFL Draft. Of course, there has already been some ties between Shedeur Sanders and Las Vegas, and Dion wanting his son to play there. Could the Raiders make a move? Would it be even something Chip Kelly desires? That's what the offseason is for. It is Super Bowl week in New Orleans. More of that next.
The winning edge. You've got it. But not everybody has it, because not everybody listens to us. But we're working on that. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
Progressive presents the SportsGrid Sports Flash. Shop Chuck Sanders. The NFC topped the AFC for a three-peat in the Pro Bowl games. Now all the attention turns to the Super Bowl next Sunday in New Orleans when the Chiefs go for their third straight Super Bowl championship in a battle against the Philadelphia Eagles. Chip Kelly is joining the Raiders as the team's offensive coordinator under new head coach Pete Carroll, leaving Ohio State after 7 years. Another big trade in the NBA, the Sacramento Kings sending De'Aaron Fox to the San Antonio Spurs. They also acquired Bulls guard Zach LaVine as part of a 3-team deal. The Bulls also regained their 2025 first-round pick from San Antonio, as well as 3 players, Zach Collins and Trey Jones from the Spurs, and Sacramento's Kevin Huerter. That move came after Saturday night's stunning blockbuster that sent Luka Doncic to the LA Lakers and Anthony Davis to the Dallas Mavericks. The NBA trade deadline is this Thursday. Bundle auto and home, renters or condo, and save with Progressive. That's the SportsGrid Sports Flash. I'm Chuck Sanders.
My son loves to fly kites, but my active psoriatic arthritis can sometimes hold me back. Now with Skyrizi to treat my skin and joints, I'm ready to go. Skyrizi, risankizumab Riza, a prescription-only 150 milligram injection for adults, helps with less joint pain, stiffness, swelling, and fatigue. For those who also have plaque psoriasis, 90% clearer skin is possible with just 4 doses a year after 2 starter doses.
Don't use if allergic to Skyrizi. Serious allergic reactions and an increased risk of infections or a lower ability to fight them may occur. Before treatment, your doctor should check for infection and tuberculosis. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms such as fever, sweats, chills, muscle aches, or cough, or if you plan to or recently received a vaccine.
With Skyrizi, there's nothing like clearer skin and better movement, and that means everything. Ask your doctor about Skyrizi today and visit Skyrizi.com or call 1-866-SKYRIZI to learn more.
You're listening to SportsGrid, spreading the winning edge far and wide. Terrestrial, internet, TV, satellite, and don't forget our mobile app. Face it, the winning edge is everywhere. Somewhere there's a squirrel frustrated he can't get a phone. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Scott Wetzel and Ben Stevens.
It is Super Bowl week. Now just 6 days away from Super Bowl 59 in New Orleans between the Eagles and the Chiefs. For the second time in 3 years, Philly and KC match up in the biggest football game of each and every season. And of course, the Chiefs hoping to make history, becoming the first team ever in the National Football League to win 3 consecutive Lombardi trophies. The fact they have won back-to-back Super Bowl rings and are even competing in a 3rd consecutive Super Bowl, already history in National Football League lore. And Scott, last week when the numbers opened up, we stated where they were, where we thought they might move. Let's check in with those numbers and what the odds expect for Super Bowl 59 Sunday inside the Caesars Superdome around 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time. KC still remains a 1.5-point favorite. A couple of cents moving here or there on the money line, minus 124 for the Chiefs, plus 106 on the other side for the Eagles. Late last week, total dropped by a full point from 49.5 to 48 and a hook. It remains at that over-under of 48.5 points for Super Bowl 59. Any surprises in the numbers or lack of movement from the odds perspective now entering Super Bowl week?
Yeah, not the one little surprise. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I remember thinking 2 years ago it was going to be a lower-scoring game, and then watching this and watching the postseason so far this year outside of the first week when you had a lot of mismatches, it's been high-scoring. The offense is just dominate, and it's fallen under 49, which, you know, there's not necessarily a magic number like 3, 4, 7, but that is now 7 touchdowns will get you an over versus being 49.5 when you need 7 touchdowns plus. I think this is going to be a high-scoring game. I think the winning team is going to put 30 on the board. I think Kansas City is going to have trouble with Philadelphia. I'm suspecting that number only to go lower if it goes anywhere bad. I think we talked about this last week. I think if you're betting Kansas City right now, you're betting them now. If you're thinking you're going to bet Philadelphia, you're waiting that line to go up to 2, then you'll bet them. If it doesn't move, then you'll see all the Eagle money come in, and I wouldn't be surprised to see that line either go to Pick'em or at least Kansas City 1. So, I mean, and we'll get our first injury report. Again, not that we're expecting anything on Wednesday, but not really surprised. Just the over-under. I would have figured more people would be betting the over after what we saw last week than the under.
So we've got the final injury report from Friday before both teams really head to New Orleans. I believe they have both already made their way to the Big Easy. And, of course, practice week around New Orleans will start on Wednesday. Super Bowl media night on this Monday. Of course, I'm sure we will have some quotes and some sound bites tomorrow on the show. Scott, not much that was overwhelmingly concerning. Guys with designations on the Eagles. 3 still listed on IR. We'll talk Brandon Graham in just a moment. And Kenneth Gainwell, of course, the second fiddle to Saquon Barkley, still in concussion protocol, of which he suffered in that NFC Championship game against the Commanders. The only guy with a designation for Kansas City, Sky Moore, also on IR, was a limited participant last week at practice, opening up his practice window, still listed as doubtful with an abdomen injury. He hasn't played for the Chiefs since mid-October. Most of the guys that we have seen in the last few weeks, at least in the postseason, we expect to play, even if they do not practice much either last week or this upcoming week. But Scott, I would say from an injury concern perspective, there is more attention on Philadelphia than that on KC. The injured left knee of Jalen Hurts, how close to 100% is he going to be come Sunday evening inside the Caesars Superdome? And how about the guys trying to keep him upright? Cam Jurgens, who was active but did not start the NFC Championship game at that center spot, dealing with back spasms, and the guy to his left, and Landon Dickerson, the all-pro left guard for Philadelphia, who started at center, injured his knee in the opening half, and did not return in the second half. Those are the 3 guys that, to me, Scott, Hurts, because he is a quarterback, although he has played through the injury, how close to 100% can he be? And the 2 guys that anchor the interior of his offensive line, Landon Dickerson and Cam Jurgens, those are the names in the injuries that I will most be paying attention to this week.
Yeah, and Dickerson and Jurgens, those are the 2 for me for sure. I think Hurts is okay. We're kind of forgetting about Patrick Mahomes and his sore ankle, right? They had those 3 weeks off before the playoffs, had a couple of games here. That's why I really do enjoy having 2 weeks off. Listen, if you're hurt, it's not going to make you 100% healthy. I get that. But if you're sore, banged up, I do enjoy the fact that these guys kind of get to reset a little bit. The offensive line would be the one for Philadelphia. But these guys were banged up last week, and they put 55 on the board against Washington. Yeah. So, I mean, I understand they're banged up, but it's the Super Bowl. They're going to play. I tell you, Ben, I flipped on this. I liked Kansas City last week. And just thinking about it, if we get Philadelphia's A game and Kansas City's A game, to me, it's a no-brainer. I think Philadelphia's the better team. I could see them winning this thing by double digits. I really can. I don't know how Kansas City's doing it. Give them all the credit in the world. We talked about it, obviously up and down. They just seem to get it done. I get all that. But, man, it's kind of like Notre Dame for me. And I'm a Notre Dame fan. I said somewhere along the line, the Irish are going to have to be able to throw the football. They can maybe get to the postseason, win them first round, win against Georgia, win against Penn. Somewhere they're going to have to prove they can throw for 300 yards and put 30 points on the board. And I think that happened in the championship. So I say that because I feel the same way about Kansas City. Somewhere along the line, they're going to have to put 30-plus on the board, and they're really going to have to be able to move the ball down the field and this and that with the wide receiver core, which is halfway decent. I get that, but it's not like we've seen with Kansas City. Probably better than last year, but you don't even have Rashee Rice this season. So I think that comes this week against Philadelphia. I really do. I think Philadelphia could win this by double digits. I think this could be like that Kansas City game against the New England or against Tampa Bay, right? I think New England with Tom Brady. I really do believe Philadelphia by double digits is a possibility.
Wow. 32 points scored by the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game. That their season high. Just the 3rd time this year that KC even got to 30 plus. It is not the Kansas City offense that we had been accustomed to in the first few years of this dynastic run. In fact, the last 2 years, Kansas City has been pretty average in terms of the points they have scored per game, 12th and 13th in scoring offense the last 2 seasons. It's been the defense that really leads the way for Kansas City. Scott, I think it's interesting when you try to correlate side, winner, and total. And, of course, we're talking a couple of cents on the money line, which is basically how this game is going to play out. Do you think both teams can win a high-scoring game, or in your mind, does that heavily favor Philadelphia?
I think it heavily favors Philadelphia. Listen, they put 30-plus on the board last week, so you got to give Kansas City credit, right? But that's the anomaly. You gave the numbers only the third time. I don't think they want to go into this game having to score 30-plus. I think they want to go into this game having to score, between their 20 and 24. So could they win? Yeah, I'm never going to say no with Patrick Mahomes, right? But I think it clearly, sides Philadelphia if they get into a shootout. Especially if Hurts to me is the key, Ben. If he's on, I know we're going to get out of Mahomes. I know we're going to get out of Kelsey and those guys. I get all, and they're going to be good for 20 points. But I don't think Kansas City is going to be able to stop that Philadelphia offense if Hurts is on his game. And he played a great game 2 years ago. I'm expecting the same thing. He was terrific last week against Washington. I'm expecting an A game out of him.
And that will be one of the huge X factors, Scott, in terms of where these edges are. Again, we are talking a couple of cents in the money line. Right now, a couple of dimes or a quarter and a nickel, 30 cents separate these two teams. Minus 124 in favor of the Chiefs, plus 106 on the other side for the Eagles. In a game with that tight of a margin expected, having even a slight edge in a positional battle, a coaching battle, it could be all the difference. Turnover battle, for sure, could be the difference. And Scott, we'll go list by list through those spots around the roster and the organization to see who holds the advantage and what it means for Super Bowl 59 on the other side of the break in the correlating numbers that will all play a part in deciding Super Bowl 59. Up next.
We're not saying every SportsGrid listener is a legend, but you might start thinking about who's going to play you in the movie. Just saying. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
A newly discovered asteroid has a tiny chance of hitting Earth in 2032, according to space agency officials. This update brought to you by Sky Rizzi. Explore proven results with Sky Rizzi. Scientists put the odds of a strike at slightly more than 1%. First spotted last month by a telescope in Chile, the near-Earth asteroid, designated 2024 YR4, is estimated to be 130 to 330 feet across. Scientists are keeping close watch on the space rock. United States Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem has decided to end temporary protection for about 350,000 Venezuelans who sought refuge in the United States. Noem revoked one of two temporary protected status designations for Venezuela, which the previous administration had placed due to extreme poverty, economic issues, and political crises in the country, according to the New York Times. Noem deemed conditions in Venezuela no longer met criteria for protection and that their presence in the U.S. was contrary to the national interest. I'm Trey Westerberg with the SportsGrid News Flash.
Now's the time to shop limited-time doorbuster deals during Pro Savings Days at Lowe's. Save $50 on a Little Giant King Combo 6-foot ladder. Was $199, now $149. Plus, save $100 on a DeWalt XR 20-volt Power Stack 5-amp-hour battery. Was $199, now $99. Get these can't-miss deals now before they're gone. Lowe's knows savings. Lowe's knows pros. Doorbusters valid 1/13 through 1/15. Selection varies by location while supplies last.
Progressive presents Renter's MVP's Most Valuable Possessions. Today's MVP, Tom Kelly's carbon fiber mountain bike. Because more than riding his carbon fiber mountain bike, Tom loves telling people about his carbon fiber mountain bike. Friends, family, even a local barista knows about his carbon fiber mountain bike. And that's why Tom's carbon fiber mountain bike, if you haven't heard about it, is today's MVP. Keep your most valuable possessions protected by bundling your renters and auto insurance with Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company affiliates and other insurers not available in all states.
Ask any player and they'll tell you any advantage is important. That's where we come in. SportsGrid delivers gaming strategies and analysis 7 days a week. The winning edge. It's your advantage to more winning more often. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Scott Wetzel and Ben Stevens.
During Super Bowl week, as we get ready for Super Bowl 59, in a game that features a 1.5 in the spread and 30 cents of separation on the money line, in a game with this margin that's expected to be razor thin, you have to go up and down the board and try to find your matchup advantages where you have them that could decide who hoists the Lombardi Trophy inside Caesars Superdome come Sunday night. Scott, as we go up and down the board, we'll go head coach, quarterback, running back room, skill positions, O-line, D-line, all of that as we go up and down the rosters and the organizations to try to find those edges. Let's start at the head coaching spot. Andy Reid for Kansas City, Nick Sirianni on the other side for Philadelphia. One of the stories the first two times these teams met was Andy Reid guiding the Eagles to a ton of NFC Championship and Super Bowl appearances, but unable to break through to get the big one. Against Philadelphia, he got his second. Now he has 3, hoping for 4 and 3 in a row. Scott, I would say, despite the fact you think the Eagles could win this game rather comfortably, you would give the head coaching advantage to Andy Reid and KC.
Yeah. In fact, when we go over all these categories, I think, Ben, this is like the biggest check I have for one team over the other team. Nick Sirianni, God bless him. He's got him to a Super Bowl for the second time. Not many coaches in NFL history could actually say that, right? So, but still, boy, Andy Reid with the pedigree, the Super Bowl championship, it's definitely Andy Reid over Philadelphia.
Yeah, I would agree with that statement. Now, quarterback, Scott, you mentioned what Jalen Hurts needs to provide for Philly if the Eagles are going to win a Lombardi trophy. But in terms of playoff pedigree and even present performance, do you give the edge to Kansas City and Patrick Mahomes in the quarterback spot? And if so, just how wide is that margin?
Yeah, I mean, listen, you got to give it to Mahomes, right? But as I said, it's not nearly as big as the spread between, Andy Reid and Sirianni. That's for darn sure. I mean, you got to give Jalen Hurts credit. I love Jalen Hurts. So I'm a little biased towards him. Disappointed what happened last season, but he's regrouped. He's gotten healthy. He is the one. It's not Barkley. It's not A.J. Brown. He's the one that makes that team go, which is why I said it's up to him to determine whether they're going to win the football game. So I'll give it to Mahomes. Let's say Mahomes is a 10. I think Jalen Hurts is a 9. 8 plus 9. I don't think the difference is really that much.
Scott, the first 2 times these teams played 2 seasons ago outside of Phoenix and Glendale, Arizona, Patrick Mahomes was great. 21 of 27. Sure, only 182 yards, but 3 touchdowns, 44 yards utilizing his legs at the time. That was a big question because of an ankle injury, and he performed incredibly well, did not turn the football over. I still think Jalen Hurts probably had the better day. Nearly a historic day in Super Bowl history. Did, in fact, make some history, but could have been looked at as a generational performance. 304 yards through the air, touchdown pass. 70 yards on the ground, was the Eagles' leading rusher in 3 rushing touchdowns. One of 2 players, this is the history in Super Bowl history, to have 3 rushing scores in a single game alongside the Broncos' Terrell Davis. But one of the issues in that game was the turnover. Jalen Hurts strip sacked early in the opening half by Nick Bolton, who scooped and scored, tying the game at the time at 14-all. The Eagles did respond with 10 points in the final 2.5 minutes of that first half to hold a double-digit lead at the break, only for Mahomes to pull off some more magic and the Chiefs to rally in the second half. But, Scott, if you were just looking individual performance and perhaps box score in Super Bowl 57, the edge of the quarterback spot was actually probably Jalen Hurts outdueling Patrick Mahomes.
Oh, yeah. No 2 ways about it. Now, again, 1 less possession because of the strip sack, and that's what kind of Kansas City's been living on this year. It's not like Mahomes is throwing for 300 yards every single game, but, man, they just had the knack. Obviously, the great fortune, but it's special teams, it's turnovers, creating short fields or defensive touchdowns. He hasn't had that need to throw for 300, 350 yards. Because of the other things, that are setting up the short fields and everything we talked about. But on the surface 2 years ago, yeah, absolutely. It was Jalen Hurts outside of that strip sack. Now, you're not going to count on probably too many turnovers from Kansas City. They headed into last week's game, Ben, with 8 straight games without a turnover, which is just amazing when you really think about that. So, don't expect too many from Kansas City, but maybe Kansas City can get some from Philadelphia since they're a little bit more prone to that. But still, yeah, I mean, that's why I say if you want to give Mahomes a 10, fully, I'll buy that, obviously. But I'm not going much lower than 9, 8.5 for Jalen Hurts.
And the Eagles, Scott, have been taking advantage of the turnover margin throughout the entirety of this postseason, forcing 4 against the Commanders, who had yet to turn the football over in those 2 road wins, playing spoiler and pulling the outright upset. They had the turnover margin against the Rams, 2-zip. And, of course, against the Packers from the very start on the opening kickoff, that's where the Eagles made their day. The Packers had 4 turnovers in that game, including 3 interceptions out of Jordan Love. That means in 3 playoff games for Philly in this playoff run, a 10-0 turnover margin, meaning Philly is plus 10 and their opponents are in the minus, a minus 10. That is really, really important stuff. KC lost the turnover margin in the AFC Championship game, and again, by that witchcraft, they win a tight one, their 17th consecutive one-score victory to make it to a 3rd consecutive Super Bowl. Scott, I think it's really great to present that quarterback edge in that perspective, and I would just say this. I bet both quarterbacks, Hurts in the NFC Championship game over what felt like a minimal prop because of his injury in terms of 180.5 yards, sailed through that number, nearly 250 and 2 touchdowns. Patrick Mahomes ended with 245 against Buffalo, but came up shy of his passing yards prop. I bet the over pregame because of how prolific he had been in a long list of sample sizes for AFC Championship game appearances. His numbers, Scott, in AFC title games, pretty elite. 16 touchdowns to only 2 INTs. His numbers in a Super Bowl, he already has 3 Lombardi trophies. Hard to take away from the guy. But 7 touchdowns to 5 interceptions. Not nearly as wide of a gap there.
No, but can he do that, 2 times in a row? I kind of doubt. A lot of that was that one Tampa Bay game, in which they were up completely shut down.
But in the 4 they have played in, at least 1 pick thrown, the only one not, against the Eagles in Super Bowl 57. Plenty more on FFC up next.
Luck is winning the lottery. Strategy is settling your divorce before cashing in the ticket.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Get the winning edge. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. SportsGrid TV and radio networks are the premier streaming video and audio channels dedicated to serving the sports wagering audience. Found on major smart TV platforms and streaming on SportsGrid Radio and Sirius XM Channel 159. SportsGrid's real-time data, expert commentary, and entertaining analysis transform viewers into informed sports enthusiasts. Our weekday radio lineup begins with the early line at 8 a.m. Eastern with Ben Stevens and Donnie Rightside. Donnie joins Kevin Walsh on Moneyline at 11 a.m. Eastern, followed by Football Full Circle at noon Eastern. Kaplan and crew join the party at 1 p.m. Eastern, and Pharrell Coast to Coast keeps things rolling from 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern. Get in the mix with Kevin Walsh and Game Time Decisions at 6 p.m. Eastern. Evenings simmer with Carver and Lisi, then boils over with Gabe Moritzi on Sports Rage Late Night at 10 p.m. Eastern. To find out where to find SportsGrid that's best for you, go to sportsgrid.com. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
How would you like to get high-speed internet for your home for less than $2 a day? That's right. For about $50 a month, you'll get lightning-fast internet. Are you paying less than $50 a month right now for your internet? Then call Whole Home Connect right now for blazing fast internet at $50 a month with no price increases, no hidden fees, no contracts, no upfront costs, no equipment fees. It's a great deal. And guess what? You can try it for 15 days. If you don't like it, you get your money back. But you're gonna love it, and you're gonna love the price. Internet for your home for $50 a month. That's less than $2 a day. Plus, no contracts, no upfront costs, no equipment fees, and our 15-day guarantee. Call now. 800-797-1292. 800-797-1292. 800-797-1292. That's 800-797-1292.
Think of us as your cool roommate that has this innate gift of somehow always picking winners and never bugs you about doing the dishes or paying rent. Sports gaming strategies and information 24/7.
Get the winning edge.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Scott Wetzel and Ben Stevens.
We continue to run through where the matchup advantages are step by step, check mark by check mark for Super Bowl 59, comparing these two teams, the Chiefs and the Eagles. First two, the Chiefs have won. Head coach Andy Reid, better than that of Nick Sirianni. Patrick Mahomes has that playoff pedigree. We give him the edge against Jalen Hurts, although Hurts has proved in direct head-to-head competition against Patrick Mahomes in Super Bowl 57, he can outperform even Patrick and certainly keep pace. Scott, as we continue to do this all week long here on FFC, it is also probably worth noting that maybe one of the biggest edges in this game, at least in comparing two positions on either side or two positional groups, the Eagles and Saquon Barkley in the running back room have a far more substantial edge than that of Kansas City in terms of what their running back field looks like right now, led by Kareem Hunt with Isaiah Pacheco. I would assume you give quite a discernible edge to Philadelphia in terms of Saquon Barkley and their running backs.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, right? And if it's not the Andy Reid by the biggest advantage over Sirianni, then this would be it. I mean, listen, Hunt and Pacheco, although Pacheco really, since he's come back from his injury, has been invisible. So it's weird. Again, it's weird with this Kansas City team, Ben. I mean, you think, okay, they really can't run the ball that much, so that Mahomes has got to be thrown for 300 yards. But as we talked about, he's not. So, it's like, how are they getting their offense? How are they getting their scoring? That's why I think this thing could turn into a one-sided affair on Sunday. I think it could be Philadelphia by double digits. Keep feeding Barkley the ball. I mean, listen, there's like a little side note to this with the offensive line being as banged up as it may be for Philadelphia. But if you just want to go running backs versus running backs, you got to take Barkley over Hunt and Pacheco.
You know, what is so interesting, Scott, even with that banged up and makeshift and shifting offensive line throughout the NFC Championship game, the Eagles had no issues against the Commanders. Now, Washington up front and really in the entirety of their defense, not nearly as good as that of Kansas City. But Saquon still had 15 carries for 118 yards, his seventh 60-yard-plus rushing touchdown this year. That an NFL record as a team, 7 rushing touchdowns, matching an NFL playoff game record for a single game and 229 yards on the ground. The Eagles are predicated, built off of that run, and of course, the best defense all season long in the NFL. To me, that will be one of the key components of this game, Scott. What do the Chiefs get out of Kareem Hunt and Isaiah Pacheco? Now, Hunt has not played in a Super Bowl with Kansas City, left for Cleveland in 2019, but was a part of the AFC Championship team in 2018. Isaiah Pacheco, much like we just had the conversation with Jalen Hurts, in Super Bowl 57 was the guy. 15 carries, 76 yards, and a touchdown to end out a sensational rookie season, especially a postseason run, a 7th-round selection out of Rutgers. It kind of left everybody saying, this freaking KC team, man, they've got Mahomes, they've got Reed, and now they just got a 7th-rounder to look like a Super Bowl MVP contender to help them win a Lombardi trophy. Isaiah Pacheco hasn't really been that this year. And Scott, I think the significant ankle injury he suffered earlier this season, we weren't sure he would return at any point this season. He's back. He's playing. He's trying to be productive. I don't think he's as efficient as he would hope to be because of how significant that injury was earlier this year.
Yeah, I mean, they've all kind of had their flash in the pan, right? Whether it was Hunt, whether it was Edwards-Helaire, right? Pacheco. I think it's almost like no matter who you put in or on this offense, with Mahomes back there, they just seem to have at least enough success to be taken seriously. And, it is amazing. Not at the Barkley level, but enough. Can you get us 80 yards? Can you average 4.5 yards a carry? That's what they're asking for out of those guys. And so far, they've gotten it done. And back to Barkley here for a quick second, Ben. What's weird about him is like the Derrick Henrys of the world, I get. You pound for 3 quarters, and then boom, 4th quarter. That defense is so worn down, so beaten up that he runs one for 60, 70 yards like he's done many times this year. Barkley, though, he's not that prototypical running back where that would be the case. He gets his 60, 65-yard runs in the first quarter. So if they can avoid that, it's still one of the bad beats from last week that I'm upset about. I had his over 124.5 yards. He had 60, first carry, and he ends up not getting it because they did a pretty good job on him after that.
7.9 yards per pop, Scott. You would have said that before the game. You probably thought Saquon had 250. But just how the game went and with the Eagles playing from in front by such a large margin. It's Super Bowl week, and we're here on FFC. We'll be back tomorrow, noon Eastern time on SportsGrid Radio.
Now you've done it. You've You've found the advantage for gaming, odds, and more. But we call